Welcome, humanoids. It's Adam and Akbar doing something different this time. You can't see me, at least not yet, and hopefully this will work. I wanted to start with no introduction, really, just play this song for you and keep it in your mind because we'll come back to it later. And once we understand this, it encapsulates the whole lesson for today.
Gather round while I sing you of Wernher von Braun, a man whose allegiance is ruled by expedience. Call him a Nazi, he won't even frown. Nazi schmazi, says Wernher von Braun. Don't say that he's hypocritical, say rather that he's apolitical. Once the rockets are up, who cares where they come down? That's not my department, says Wernher von Braun. Some have harsh words for this man of renown, but some think our attitude should be one of gratitude, like the widows and cripples in old London town, who owe their large pensions to Wernher von Braun. You too may be a big hero once you've learned to count backwards to zero. In German or English, I know how to count down. And I'm learning Chinese, says Wernher von Braun.
Oh, okay. All right, let me switch over here. Technical difficulties here for me to do this. Let's see, Akbar, are we doing this right? I guess we'll find out. I'm gonna do this. And I might even, hey, there I am, look. There's Akbar. All right, let's see if that worked, everybody. Welcome, lecture 13. We're in our module on the responsible conduct of science, and in this lecture, I just want to make a distinction between doing things right and doing the right things. Now, we're going to start with a new segment. Akbar wonders, what's up? Akbar says, look, Adam, we just started our unit on RCR, and yet you want to say it's not enough? What's up with that? And look, Akbar's right. This is a weird talk because all of a sudden, we just started learning responsible conduct of research. And I'm going to say to you, that's not enough. Okay, now, it's true. Many teachers who teach this class will linger on RCR. FFP, right? So fabrication, falsification, plagiarism. And QRP, questionable research practices. And the ethics codes of scientists that try to prevent these things. That'll be the whole class. And we will also keep talking about it next week. But there's so much more. What I'm saying in this lecture is that RCR is about doing things right, doing science the right way. It's super important. I'll give it full stop. But, okay, we also have to think about what are the right things to do. And that's the distinction I wanted us to get thinking about now, because it's going to guide us through the whole second half of the class, which is coming up soon, believe it or not. So today we're just going to get ready to think more broadly. That's our objective, to expand our sense of the ethics of science beyond this internalist notion, this internalist ethics of RCR. I mean internalist in the sense that these are the norms we're learning that govern the society of science, how they should conduct themselves. But what about science in society? That's what I want us to think about. So RCR meaning doing things right is not enough. We have to think about what are the right things to do. And that's why I had you listen to that song. Now we're going to get that. But first I'm going to give you a couple of really cheesy examples. Take them or leave them. If they're not useful for you, just forget about them because we'll give you better stuff to think about later in the talk. We're going to do this thought experiment. And then I'll tell you the two arguments I'm just putting out there almost as hypotheses for you to consider in light of expanding the ethics of science. Then we'll get to Wernher von Braun, this guy we just listened to a song about, but who the heck was he? And why does it matter? Well, I'll try to clear that up for you. And then we'll end by asking, okay, so maybe we should think about what are the right things, what kind of science we should do. But how in the world would we ever answer questions like that? It's much fuzzier than the norms guiding the conduct of science that we've studied so far. All right, two cheesy examples. They both involve my poor white dog, Bluebell. I don't know what kind of dog she is. She's a white dog. She has white fur because she's a mutt. Wonderful animal, just wonderful. Here's the example of the right way to do the wrong thing. If you get a high-pitched voice like this, oh, Bluebell, oh, Bluebell, and it's got to be excited like that. You hear that, Bluebell? And then you say, want to go on a walk? Want to go on a walk? Like that. Oh my gosh, her tail will start wagging. And her eyes will get big. She starts slobbering. She loves to get that dopey grin on her face. And then you say, just kidding. And you sit down and watch TV. Well, that's terrible. You just teased the poor dog. So that's an example of the right way to do the wrong thing. Okay, it's an excellently executed teasing of the dog, and that's mean. Don't do it. Flip it around. The wrong way to do the right thing. So the right thing, taking Bluebell to the dog park. Oh, she loves it. Loves it. And it's good for her, right? Get some exercise. Little socialization with other dogs. But there's a right way to do that and a wrong way. The wrong way is to forget the leash. Not that I would ever, okay, I did this once. Well, what happens? You forget the leash. She's running around. Some other dog gets loose. And I don't have a way to control Bluebell. And she gets nipped in the ear and it's bleeding. And it was a traumatic experience, right? There you go. Two dopey examples. One, the right way to do the wrong thing. The second, the wrong way to do the right thing. Maybe keep those in mind if those are useful. But now let's go into science because that's what we're talking about here, right? Same distinction is what I'm getting at here. Imagine there's a cancer researcher and she does everything right. So RCR, you know those norms we were studying? No FFP, no falsification, fabrication, plagiarism, not even questionable research practices, that kind of gray area stuff like publishing the least little bit to get more publications on your CV. She would never do something cheesy like that. And she's brilliant and she's gifted, right? But her research subjects for her experiments are all snatched against their will from the Golden Triangle Mall in Denton. You know, you're just walking along shopping at, I don't know, what's down there? Oh boy, I'm drawing a blank. JCPenney, is that there? You're walking through JCPenney and yoink, somebody grabs you out of the men's boxer brief section, and before you know it, you're strapped down and you're getting chemicals injected into your arm for this wonderful scientific experiment. Well, obviously RCR, insofar as we've studied it to this point, is not a sufficient account of ethical or good or responsible science. Right? Because if somebody can live up to those norms and yet still be snatching people out of the mall against their will to enroll them in their experiment, we got to do more than just RCR as we've defined it thus far, right? Now, here's my two arguments. We need to both follow the internal norms of a practice like we've been discussing so far, whether through Merton's example or through these RCR ethics that we've talked about. And we have to direct that practice towards worthy or good ends, right? That's argument one. Argument two, when you add that second part, so not just doing things right, but doing the right things, well, that opens up a messy can of worms. We know now what it's like to do good or responsible science in this internalist sense of doing things right. You know, don't fabricate, don't falsify, don't plagiarize. But which science is good to do? We still leave all those questions unanswered. Okay, so we need to expand the ethics of science. That's what I'm saying. The cancer researcher, our little thought experiment, maybe you think, well, look, Adam, this is a simple fix because all we have to do is expand RCR a little bit to include some norms, let's say like informed consent for research with human subjects. And indeed, that's going to be our next module. So put a pin in that idea. Good idea. But wait a second. Beyond that even, we live in a techno-scientific world, and in some way that means we are all guinea pigs in a real-life experiment. We're all human subjects to a techno-scientific enterprise juiced up by capitalism that's constantly innovating new things and then rolling them out on the marketplace, right? Think about computer science and the internet, social media, deep fakes, artificial intelligence. Think about biology and chemistry and all the different foods and foodstuffs and food chemicals and additives and medicines. And we've talked about this CRISPR technology, and you could go on and on and on, right? Nobody's getting my consent for any of this, right? So aren't I kind of like the person being snatched out of Golden Triangle Mall and being enrolled in an experiment against my will? What's going on here? With engineering and science, new materials, we developed plastics. Nobody signed like a consent form, like, yes, go ahead and turn my life into one giant plastic soup, but that happened. Okay. So how do we take into account all of these diverse perspectives, interests, and impacts? That's where we want to head. And it is a can of worms. Like I said, it's messy. Now, finally, you're like, okay, Adam, but who is this song about? Wernher von Braun. Kind of, maybe, I don't know. Like our thought experiment with that cancer researcher, Wernher von Braun was a brilliant, undoubtedly brilliant rocket scientist who developed the V-2 rockets for Nazi Germany. So the line in the song when he says, some may have harsh words for this man of renown, but others say that the widows and cripples of old London town owe their pensions to him. Why is that? Well, because he developed the rocket that was used to bomb London by the Nazis, right? Causing great damage, destruction, casualties to civilians, okay? After the war, though, this is what's interesting for you to think about. When the US and other nations, allied nations, were prosecuting and even sentencing to death some of the scientists involved in the Nazi concentration camp experiments, okay? Did we do that with Wernher von Braun and other rocket scientists and engineers? No. We took them and put them in charge of our rocket programs at NASA, and he ended up leading the Saturn rocket development that would eventually get Americans up on the moon. Now, for that work, he was inducted into the National Academy of Engineering and awarded the National Medal of Science. The song that was performed is by a guy named Tom Lehrer, a social critic, a social satirist, who thought there was something really fishy about this, right? Here's his satire. Recall a line from the song, so this is a direct quote. Don't say that he's hypocritical, say that rather he's apolitical. Once the rockets are up, who cares where they come down? That's not my department, says Wernher von Braun. Okay, look, he must have done good science, adhering to the Mertonian norms or something like that. Responsible conduct of research. Look, if he was falsifying his data or fabricating it, his rockets wouldn't have worked, but they worked. They went up, right? Once the rockets are up, that's my job, period. That's what I do. The scientist does good science in the sense of we do honest research that makes things work. Once I've done that, boom, that's it. That's my responsibilities. That's my department. That's my job description. That's my identity. Right? But Lehrer's argument is no, not good enough, right? No, you are being immoral or amoral, right? You're being a tool. You're allowing whoever wants to pay your salary, you'll do whatever they want. You want a rocket to blow up women and children in London? Yeah, sure. I mean, if the pay is good, right, I'll make the rocket work. This is what Lehrer's kind of seething criticism is, right? He's saying that von Braun is not taking into account his full range of responsibility. Where the rockets come down, that is the impacts of your research. That is your department, okay? That is your responsibility. In other words, you have to do the right things. It's not enough to do things right, to get something to work, to get your experiment to work. Is it a good experiment though? Is it something you should be doing? Is it going to have a positive impact on society? Whose interests are you serving? That's your responsibility. That's your department. You sign up to be a scientist. That's what you're taking on. Okay, that's, I think, Lehrer's implied argument in this satire. But wait, and I'll end on this because look, I said it's a can of worms. You might say, great, these are important questions to think about. But just how far can we stretch a scientist's department, right? Their responsibility. How big is that box? How much can they really be expected to take on? Think about some case studies. What about American nuclear physicists working on the Manhattan Project to develop the atomic bomb? Now, were they working for the good guys? So that makes it okay, right? Or was it that the bomb averted other casualties because we didn't have to send soldiers into Japan? And that makes it okay? Why was von Braun so bad working for the Nazis, but Lehrer doesn't call out the, let's say, Oppenheimer and other Americans working for American interests, even though they developed much more destructive technology? What's going on there? And look, we bought von Braun back and he got us on the moon. Isn't that a good thing? Wasn't it the right thing to do to hire him at NASA? What else are we going to do? Chuck him in jail? Would that have been the right thing to do? But let's think more broadly, okay? Pick another example. Just because internet trolls do awful things online, that doesn't mean all of the scientists and engineers who develop the internet are responsible for their behavior, does it? Look, wait a second. What can we really put in their department? What is really their responsibility? Because they might create something, but they're not the users of that thing. So how far is it fair to stretch responsibilities here? That's, anyways, what I want us to get us thinking about as we continue marching through this class. Akbar gets the last word here as we are in the shadow of the Death Star on this slide here. He says, sure, sometimes the difference between doing things right and doing the right thing is fuzzy, kind of like the examples we went through, right? It's hard to say how far can we push this. But when the chips are down, it may be the only thing that matters is this difference. Are you doing the right thing? So forget about for a moment, are you doing it well? Are you doing things right? But whose interests are you serving, right? When the chips are really down, and I don't know, will this come up in your life in some context? Maybe in science, maybe other part of your life? When you're going to have to say, look, I could do my job really well, but this isn't the right job to be doing. Okay? That's, I think, a deep, profound ethical question to be thinking about, and we're gonna do that as we march into this semester some more. Okay, so there's your kind of wild card talk for today. More on RCR coming up. Until then, may the force be with you.